People often imagine I only visit the young dreamers, the children who beam with belief, who leave out cookies, who fall asleep hoping to hear sleigh bells in the distance. But belief isn't always loud. Sometimes it hides in silence, in pens tapping against empty notebooks, in half-finished poems, in long walks home with questions bigger than the sidewalks can hold. I don't just visit the hopeful, I visit the ones who are still trying to believe in themselves. And that's how I found him, on the edge of a rooftop in Honolulu, legs folded beneath him, eyes fixed on a night sky filled with 1,000 answers he hadn't yet earned. He was 17, lean, still, listening to the wind. He didn't move when I landed behind him, didn't flinch, didn't turn, just said, "You're late." I smiled. "I didn't think you believed in me." "I don't," he said, "but I believe in visits." You see, Barack, or Barry as he was known then, was a boy raised by stories. Stories of a father who wasn't there, of a country still deciding if it would ever truly accept him, of ancestors who endured so he could sit where he was now, between the stars and the streetlights, between Kenya and Kansas, between myth and man. He wasn't angry, not visibly, but inside him was a quiet ache, the kind that forms when you're always two things, and never enough of either. Black, but raised by white grandparents. American, but with a name the country couldn't pronounce without suspicion. Brilliant, but pretending to be cool. Ambitious, but terrified of being seen as too much. I sat beside him. He didn't move. "You want to talk?" I asked. "No," he said, "but I'll listen." So I told him what I saw, a boy who carried himself like he had already failed something. Not because he had, but because the world had made him feel like he need to explain his existence before he could ever be accepted. A boy who could move between worlds, basketball courts and book clubs, house parties and honor rolls, but never quite landed in either. I told him I saw someone who didn't need to be more of one thing. He needed to stop apologizing for being everything. He stayed quiet, just picked at the edge of his shoe, eyes still watching the sky. Then he asked, "Do you ever get tired of being a symbol?" That stopped me. He wasn't trying to be clever, he was trying to survive. "Sometimes," I said. "But the trick is remembering that the symbol means nothing if the person behind it disappears." He nodded, told me about the books he'd been reading, James Baldwin, Webb Du Bois, Toni Morrison. He said their words felt like oxygen, but they also made him feel small. "They went through so much," he said, "and I'm just floating." I told him, floating is part of it. The people who change the world don't always start with ground beneath them. Sometimes they're born between borders, not to be lost, but to build the bridge. He finally turned to look at me. His eyes were young but heavy. He had already begun carrying the weight of being promising. "I want to speak," he said, "but every time I open my mouth, I hear someone else." I nodded. That's the cost of brilliance without direction. You're echoing the voices that shaped you, but the work ahead of you, it'll require your own voice. Not louder, just rooted. We talked about his father, about the pain of idolizing a man you barely knew, about the disappointment of learning your heroes are human, and the danger of thinking that makes them unworthy. He admitted that he sometimes felt hollow, that in school he performed like he was in a play, the smart one, the cool one, the unbothered one, when really he just wanted someone to say, "It's okay to not know who you are yet." That's when I told him something I don't say often. "Barack, legacy isn't built by knowing who you are. It's built by choosing who you want to become every single day, even when no one claps for it." He didn't say anything, but his breathing slowed. He pulled out a notebook from his bag, showed me a poem. It wasn't finished, a few verses broken up by scribbled lines and angry edits. It was called Pop, a tribute to his grandfather, the man who raised him with steady hands and quiet rules. The poem wasn't polished, but it was honest. I read it, then said, This is your voice, not because it rhymes, but because it reveals." He looked down, said softly, "I don't want to just be inspiring, I want to be useful." "Then serve," I said. but do it with your whole self. Not the version the world prefers, not the version that gets applause, the one that stays up at night asking, "Am I still doing this for the right reasons?" I reached into my coat, pulled out a tiny, curved shard of mirror. He looked at it. "What is it?" "A piece of a window from Selma," I said. "From the church steps. It shattered when truth was stepped on, but pieces still reflect light." He held it gently. "Why give it to me? Because you'll stand on stages one day. And when you do, you'll be tempted to say what people want to hear. But if you keep this, if you remember what shattered before you, you'll remember to speak from scars, not strategy." We sat in silence again. The kind of silence that doesn't demand a reply. The kind that lingers because it belongs. Before I left, I said, "Barack, the world will pull at you. They'll want the scholar, the peacemaker, the preacher, the politician. But the one they'll need most is the man who remembers he was a boy sitting on a rooftop wondering if he was enough." Years later, I'd watch that boy become a man. A senator, a speaker, a president. I'd see him stand at the Lincoln Memorial and say, "Let us be the generation that chooses hope over fear." I'd see him wrestle with policy and perception. See him age in office, not from time, but from trying to do it all while still being whole. But what I remember most is that night, the boy with a pen, a poem, a question in his eyes, not asking to be great, just asking if it was okay to be himself. And that, my friends, is what makes a leader. Not the title, not the speech, not the suit, but the courage to be seen before the world decides what you're worth. And to keep going anyway. And don't every likes, share, or subscriber help spread Santa's talus far and wide.